Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back. We are ready to look at the anatomy of our other body type, the female body type. And we're looking here at a sagittal, it's a model, it's a photo of a model of a sagittal cut through the female body pelvis. And let's go ahead and label our urinary bladder and our urethra. And it's important then to note that in the female body type, these systems, urinary and reproductive, are separate, whereas in the male body type, of course, the urethra is part of both of those systems. Now, just like we started with the scrotum in the male body type, we can start with the homologous tissue, which is the outer lip or the labia majora. And then we have the inner lip or labia minora. And we can see also that we have this pad of fat that's sitting on top of the pubic bone, and this is called the mons pubis. Now, one thing that is missing from this model would be hair. So you would expect the mons pubis to be hairy. You would expect the labia majora to be hairy. That can vary in how much hairiness is present. It can be hairy all the way back towards the anus. It can be hairy a little bit on the thigh. So there's a lot of variation there. Also, in this particular model, they're showing the labia minora would be neatly tucked inside the labia majora. And this can vary quite a lot. So labia minora can be nicely tucked, or it can be fully extended outside of the labia majora. Both are perfectly normal, beautiful ways for your genitals to be. The labia minora is can be very pigmented. So it can have a strong color to it or not. Sometimes you'll see it sort of maybe darker around the tip. So you might see that as well. And so, this model, a lot of the images of the female reproductive genitals that are out there in porn, for instance, are not, they're airbrushed or white brushed to look a certain way, when the, variety of human genitals is very diverse. When we're talking about the female genitals, we use the term vulva. So the term vagina is talking specifically about this passageway that's leading to the uterus. When we talked about homologous structures, we mentioned also that the female erectile tissue is called the clitoris. And we see a nice diagram of this full structure from our OpenStax textbook. And so we see that the clitoris has all the same tissue. So we're going to have a glans clitoris, which is like the glans penis. We have a prepuce or a foreskin tissue, just like we had for the penis. We see also erectile tissue. So we have corpus cavernosus extending on the left and right sides. Notice that this is extending all the way down. We call this opening in the vulva the vestibule. So we're seeing the corpus cavernosum on either side of that vestibule. We have also the bulb of vestibule. So this would be homologous to the corpus spongiosus. So bulb of vestibule would be homologous to corpus spongiosus. And we see that it's also extending on either side of that vestibule or urogenital opening. So there's actually, it's paired, whereas the corpus spongiosus was a singular erectile tissue with the urethra running through it in the male. We also have some important glands in the female. We've mentioned these in the homologous video. So we talked about both Bartholins glands and the Skene's glands. And I think in this diagram, we see the opening of the Bartholins glands on either side of the vagina. So that's not pictured in our model at all. And we don't have the Skene's glands pictured anywhere. When we talk about the Bartholins glands, these are going to release fluid during arousal to lubricate and provide scent. So we did mention in arousal non-concordance that sometimes people will interpret if the vulva is wet, that the individual is aroused and ready and desirous of intercourse or sexual activity, but that may not always be the case. So the only way to really know is to ask. Skene's glands are going to, remember, be homologous with the prostate. So these will swell around the urethra, making it unlikely for urination to occur during arousal, and can produce some fluid as well to help with lubrication as well. Or if you've heard of instances, rare instances of female ejaculation, that's happening from the Skene's gland. So if we go back over to our diagram, we're seeing that the labia majorum and minorum, the clitoris, the mons pubis are all composing the female genitalia referred to as the vulva. When we look at the vagina, we see it's got these folds, which we call rugae. Those folds are important to allow for stretch and expansion during either penetration or labor and delivery. We'll see that the vagina has a very active microbiome. It's dominated by bacteria from the genus Lactobacillus, which are really important in creating a lot of lactic acid and really lowering the pH of the vagina. This is super important in protecting the health of this body system. This is a fairly large opening, and this is going to be important protection against infection, which could potentially make its way into the uterus, into the fallopian tubes, and the pelvic cavity. So it's very important to not wash out these organisms. So some individuals will cleanse this area by douching, which is not necessary because the microbiome is actually cleansing the vagina to keep it safe from potential pathogens. You might also see a thin tissue that can cover the vaginal opening, which is called the hymen. The hymen may or may not be present. It is in no way an indicator of virginity, of whether or not the individual has experienced penetration or intercourse. If it gets torn, it will repair. It's a living tissue. It can become more flexible with penetration. Okay. Looking back up at the vagina, let's see this top of the vagina is called the cervix. Then we're getting into the organ called the uterus, which we'll come back to in more detail in a little bit. We can see right here, we can call it the fallopian tube. You can call it the oviduct. And then kind of in this very back area here, we're seeing the ovary. So we are seeing a single uterus, but you do have a paired ovary. So you have left and right ovaries and left and right fallopian tubes leading from the ovary to the uterus. Okay. Up next, we're going to take a closer look at the ovary, looking at that process of egg production or oogenesis. So stay tuned. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.